Hey, welcome back. Welcome to Carmel. And good to have you here. Don't forget, if you like what you see, click that like button, subscribe, and when you subscribe, go ahead and click on the bell so that you can receive everything we're giving to you. So subscribe and click the bell. And today we're going to talk about, again, encouraging you. Acorns to oak trees. You'll want to listen to this. And I'll give you a pause. I'll come back. Your past can often be a burden. And in Carmel, when we're discerning our call to draw closer to God, at vocation, the past that you've led can be a burden. And let me tell you, again, we're dealing with maps of knowledge, and in the past, this is something that's been on a map of knowledge to relieve you of that burden. I want to relieve you of that burden by sharing with you what was shared with me about an oak tree, and that was once an acorn. And I want to suggest to you that your history is irrelevant. Now, we're in Michigan. I want to talk about a teacher give you a little story here. Teacher leads her class of 16 and 17-year-olds out into the woods looking for, there's a contest to find the largest oak tree in the world. And so guess what? In this story, they find it, and it's in Michigan. So she takes the kids out, and they're looking at all these trees. And they find one, and they measure the circumference of the tree. They measure the height. This tree is enormous, and it's magnificent. It's got acorns, and the acorns fall to the ground and feed squirrels. It feeds farm animals. Awesome fruit from that tree. That tree provides shade. Shade for resting workers and laborers from the fields come. And if the tree were to be harvested and limbs taken off, it was so big you could build 3 or 4 houses. It was an awesome, and still is an awesome tree. Now, healthy, yes. Strong, yes. Just super green. So the kids, the teacher said, so is this the tree that you want to submit in the contest? And they said, that's it. And she said, fine. And we'll submit this tree. And when they did submit it, they did win the contest. But she said, before you do your final selection on this tree, which you believe is the biggest and the most healthiest and most robust tree in the forest, she took a letter from her pocket. She took that letter out, and she began to read from the letter. And she said, I want to share with you a letter that I received from somebody that knew this tree. This tree was once an acorn, and this individual knew that tree when it was an acorn. And she began to say, in this letter, it went on about how the acorn was a filthy acorn, a dirty acorn. The letter said this acorn was frequently found with pigs, even amongst garbage. All these kids are surrounding this teacher as she's reading this letter. And this letter brought out the sad past realities about the life of the poor, the weak acorn that lived on the street, bouncing amongst the gutters. Terrible, terrible. Garbage, where there were pigs that frequented it. Filthy acorn. The letter was very graphic. The letter illustrated well about the life of an acorn. And most of all, the letter was true. Now, when the teacher was done with the letter, she put it back. She looked at all the kids. She put it back in her pocket as I'm putting back in my pocket. And there was a clear impression. There was silence over the group, and there was a clear impression of the wide gulf between the life of that filthy, dirty acorn and what stood before them as an enormous, healthy, robust, magnificent, majestic oak tree. Now, the state of that oak tree showed what had become of that filthy acorn. The history of that oak tree as an acorn was irrelevant. The teacher asked the kids, now, because of the history of that acorn, the history of this oak tree as acorn, Do you want to rethink your choice of this oak tree as being one of the most magnificent and the largest in the world? And all the kids said, no, no, we want to submit that as our submission for the contest of the largest oak tree. She said, fine. She said, fine. I just wanted to let you know that. And so that brings us down to the idea that the history in the mind of those kids was totally irrelevant. The history of that acorn that gave life and grew into that huge oak tree, totally irrelevant. So it's the same with your walk with God. I bring it to you. Your walk with God. Your history, your past history that you're turning on and coming forth is like that first sprout from that acorn to become that magnificent oak tree. It's irrelevant. I want you to think like that. It's irrelevant. Your history is irrelevant. I can't underscore that enough. And if you're dealing in this area and you're coming closer to communities or like-minded people, you want to encourage individuals who may not be expressing their history about how irrelevant that is. That's as Carmel as the day is old. That is Carmel. That is God redeeming through Jesus Christ a fallen humanity, a fallen group. And that's the Holy Spirit coming to you where you are at to raise you up to become something other than what you are now. And so you don't want to be deceived. If you're in formation, you don't want to be deceived that worthiness has relevance as a discernment in a call to serve God. The discernment in a call. And worthiness. History of diabetes may be relevant because you may need medicine. But the history of a worthiness, the worthiness, and it wasn't relevant for Paul, and it most likely will not be relevant for you. And think about that acorn to oak tree. This is the normative approach. This is what was on the map of John of the Cross. There should be no doubts about your past and no relevancy given about your past. It is a conversion. It is a new start. Now, this is about the ordinary approach. And I see that acorn played out over and over and over, where individuals come, they have a realization, and they come to know God, and they want to change, and you're going to want to change, and they think about how unworthy they are. And remember, you're on a DIY path. You're receiving guidance from the Holy Spirit, and you're thinking how unworthy you are to have a relationship with God. And that's not accurate. And that's not accurate at all. And you could be easily deceived by diabolical forces, okay? Now, in America, in the world today, we have a lot of abuses going on by people who are leaders. That doesn't mean that if you have a past history of writing bad checks and you're a bank robber or whatever, then maybe you can still draw closer to God. You just won't be around. Maybe you won't be handling the checkbook. But we're talking about the ordinary way of individuals who feel they are unworthy because of past sins, past abortions, past betrayals, past lies, and God is calling them out of that to a greater future. So I want to think about that. Again, we will put this in our series. This is, I think, our fourth take. And go ahead and comment below. And we're not talking about the extraordinary problems that are going on with sex abuse. We're not talking about the extraordinary goings-ons about narcissism or mental health. We're talking about you coming to God, having a problem, and living out a discernment to call closer to God. And for lay people particularly, you're living in the world and you want to do better tomorrow. You want to do more good tomorrow. And I'm saying to you that if you have a filthy past as an acorn, it does not prevent you from being reformed, being drawn by God out of that filthiness to become an enormous acorn and serve your neighbor in that faith, in that goodness. Seppi, is there anything you want to add?
No, that's just time.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Was I accurate and complete in that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm not telling anybody out there that's on medicine for bipolar or mental health to stop taking your medicine. That's not what we're talking about here. That's common sense. Our Lady of Common Sense guides us. And so nothing you want to add? Can we call that a wrap?
Yeah.
That's a wrap. My boss said that's it. Thank you.